Hello and welcome to SuperCoach 2026. Paton here on day one. The game has been open for just a few hours, which means it's time to pick a team. We have unlimited trades, $10 million to spend, and can do as much as we like before round one, chopping and changing as we see news come in from preseason training, practice matches, preseason games, and opening round when that rolls around. But I have to say I'm pretty happy with the team I'm looking at this stage. We'll see how close it is to the team that actually roll out when opening round and round one come along. But let's talk through it from defence, and we'll start with a pretty easy pick, the most expensive guy in the back line, and that is Nazaya Wanganeen-Millera. I owned Naz last year, was very fun to own. I think he can go to another level again this year. We'll probably play more in the midfield, which is fine by me. The Saints do play an opening round, so they have an early bye, which is not ideal, but if you look at the defenders, the top four, in fact, all share that same bye. So going to be tricky to pick more than one of them, but I think it's easy to just grab Naz straight away, pay up. You get what you pay for. Slotting in next to him, we've got Connor Rozee. I'm seeing him in a lot of teams. Very popular pick. I can see why. No early buy for the power. Connor obviously transitioned more into that halfback role last year. Josh Carr apparently was the brains behind that move. Now he's the senior coach, so I think he'll love that this year. Connor just playing purely out of defence, and Port has an amazing run to start the year. They play their first four games against the teams that finished in the bottom four last year. So he can really get us off to a flyer. So they're my two sort of primo defenders. Then it's a bit of a gap. I think there's some value to be had down back. Now, Colby McKercher is someone I just picked straight away without hesitation. Last year, he was terrible in the first half of the year, trying to play a bit of midfield, half forward, wing. Then he moved to half back and absolutely blitzed it for the second half of the year, averaged over 100, and we can get him sort of at about an 83 average price-wise this year. So that makes him a great value selection. I'm a little bit nervous after seeing some reports that he's training with the midfielders at Arden Street. I mean, he was drafted as a midfielder. Maybe he'll be great in that role, but I do like him out of defence. We know how good he can be back there. So we'll wait and just see how that plays out over the next couple of months. But we'll slot him in there for now and hope that that's where he plays most of his footy this year. Now, I've gone with another really bargain pick in my next slot here in defence, and that is Kadeem Coleman, someone who dominated in the 2023 grand final, nearly won the Norm Smith medal. I think he finished second in voting on that day. I think it was 127 SuperCoach points, and we're very keen to start him the next year. He looked fantastic off that halfback role for Brisbane. Then he did his knee in opening round, missed the entire season, didn't come back until midway through last year, and then he hurt his quad and missed the rest of the year. So he's played two games in the past 2 years, which means he's extremely cheap, $233K. He's almost a rookie, and the reports out of Brisbane are that he's flying in pre-season. Chris Fagan saying he's never seen him look fitter, so he's a bit of a forgotten man, but super, super cheap for us in SuperCoach. Brisbane does look a little bit different to what they did back then. They've won 2 premierships since then. Unfortunately, Kitty's missed out on both of them, but Jasper Fletcher's really come on. Darcy Wilmot has really become a great player off that half-back line. Dane Zorko was kind of the guy that they had to move back there when Kitty went down, and he's absolutely thrived, and probably not the sort of player you can see giving that up in a hurry. So we'll watch and see how Kitty fits in there. But sounds like Fags is really keen to get him into the team somewhere, and even if it's playing a bit of half forward or something like that, if he's in the team, I think he's going to make money based on that price. So for the rest of the defence, I've just got rookies at this stage. We know these guys are a bit of placeholders at this stage. We'll wait and see. We'll get a lot more news over the preseason as to which of the rookies are likely to get games and make us some money early. But, I'm pretty keen on these at the moment. So Josh Gibcus at Richmond, we've picked him before as a rookie. I think I might have picked him twice in defence in SuperCoach at that rookie price. This year he's $139K after played just one game in the final round last year after missing basically 2 years with injury. He got through that. He's got through all of preseason so far and looking good on the track. So fingers crossed he gets through to round one. He was a star interceptor when Richmond drafted him in the top 10 2 or 3 years ago. So hopefully he can show that what his potential is this year. I think Jai Sarong is a really great get for Sydney. He's been stuck behind a few others at Hawthorn in that sort of similar kind of interceptor, third tall defensive kind of role. Obviously, the Hawks have plenty of players who can play that, and he's won the last 2 best and fairest at Box Hill, moves to Sydney, where I think there's a role for him there in the defence. So hopefully if he gets into the team, I think he's going to be a really good value pick for us in SuperCoach. My bench at the moment, Josh Lindsay at West Coast, new draftee, but he is that, distributor off halfback. They picked him up, really rated for his kicking. Could be the sort of kick-out man, halfback guy at West Coast, which was a great role for us last year with the likes of Ryan Marrick and Tom McCarthy, who were both sort of moved up the ground. So I think there's a spot there potentially for Josh. And Carmichael at the Bulldogs is another one who is a bit of a running halfback type. Draftee, we'll wait and see. I've heard some good raps about him, but we'll wait and see what he looks like in the flesh, hopefully in some practice games pretty soon. Moving to the midfield, number one easy pick is Zach Butters. I feel like he slipped under the radar a tiny bit last year, despite averaging 120. I already talked about Port's fixture to open in the season, so he could put some really massive numbers. He's going to be a popular captain or vice-captain choice in those games. Contract year, obviously, for Zach, so he's got plenty to play for. We know he's an absolute gun. I suppose I said it was an easy pick. Well, he was, but I did initially have Marcus Bontempelli in this slot, obviously the number one scorer last year in SuperCoach, but decided to take him out just purely based on that really, really high price. He's the only guy over 700K. We know how he can score and he can justify that, but the Bulldogs opening run is not easy. They have a bye as part of opening round. They do play, I think, Geelong, Hawthorn, GWS in the first 5 or 6 rounds, so maybe he cops a tag or two, misses a game, price drops. We can probably try and pick him up in that upgrade season. It's always a bit of a gamble trying to predict that, but at the moment, I'm looking at maybe saving the money and leaving the Bont out for at least my starting team. But I am going with some other guys who I think can put up some really big numbers in the opening games. And even though some of them do have buys, but I'm just trying to be a bit strategic about making sure we don't have too many having the buys in the same week with best 18 scoring. Hopefully we can cover one each round. So I've got Matt Rowell there, Nick Dacos and Finn Callaghan. That's sort of my big four guns in the midfield who can all, have really high ceilings. I mean, Matt Rowell, the Suns opened the season against Richmond and West Coast, so he could put ballistic scores up before he then has a bye, not great. Then they come back and I think he plays Essendon. So if other people are scared off picking him because of the bye, I might just get those scores, all to myself. So, and I had Matty Rowell last year. He was traded in. There was some slight issues with that initial trade, but he turned out to be a fantastic pick. So love him, obviously, gun player, won the Brownlow. Nick Dacos, no more needs to be said about him. And Callaghan was an absolute flyer in the second half of last year, averaged over 120 in the run home. So love him as well. And then we have two guys who could be potential premium picks. If I think they can score like premiums, they're definitely not priced like premiums because of injuries. So there's always an element of risk picking these guys. Will their body hold up? But so far the reports out of training are good for Haydn Young and Darcy Parish. Young has shown he can average well over 100 if he gets his body right. And before last year, he didn't have too many injury problems. It was really just last year he had a horrible run of hamstring and quad type injuries. But fingers crossed he gets through to round one. And similar for Parish, who has a bit of a reputation as an injury-prone player. But again, he's had several years where he's played 20, 21, 22 games, but then last year, had no luck whatsoever. So again, both going well on the training track so far, but we'll be keeping a close eye on them over pre-season. And then we don't actually have too many slots here for rookie-priced players in the midfield, which is normally where we get a lot of our best rookies. So we'll see how this plays out. If a few more emerge, we might have to see what that means. But at the moment, going with Dyson Sharp and Jagger Smith on the field. I think they'll be very popular in a lot of teams and very happy to have those guys on field. I think they can score, 60, 70, 80 at least in those opening rounds to really start getting the money rolling and give us some good scores on the field. Sharp was playing seniors in the Sandful last year. Essendon obviously needs some help in the midfield. I think there'll be plenty of opportunities for their draft kids early doors. So he's a pretty easy pick, and Jagger is probably the easiest pick in the whole game after we all had him last year. Then he did his ACL in the preseason, missed the whole year, but now he's heaps cheaper, only 119K. So he's a bit of a no-brainer. Again, bench, a bit of guesswork to start with, but I do like Patrick Rechko, putting my Tigers Nuffy hat on. Again, he was picked up late in the trade period actually from Geelong. He was basically delisted from Geelong, then traded to Richmond, which is a bit of a weird one for a pick in the hundreds. But it was Richmond's way of just getting him on the list before having to go through the draft or something like that. And he had a really good year for the Cats at the VFL, just could not break into the senior team. But he's a fast wingman type, runs all day. And I think there's an opening there at the Tigers with Camden McIntosh retiring. Hugo Ralphsmith has been injured. So and the reports are good for Rechko early in the preseason. So he's one to watch who I think is a good chance to play at round one, speaking in late January. And then I've chucked on a couple of the mature age draft picks who are normally picked up with an eye to giving them some games. Angus Anderson at the Pies and Billy Cootie at Sydney Swans. So we'll see how those guys go and who else potentially emerges for us as cheapies in the midfield. Rucks are set and forget. I've just chucked in Tristan Cherry and Max Gawn, the two most expensive rucks. Both averaged close to 130 last year. I don't see that changing a hell of a lot. We do have new rules in the ruck to sort of prevent rucks wrestling. Then we have the last touch rule coming in. So there'll be, we won't have as many boundary throw-ins potentially around the middle of the ground. But I don't know that that's going to hurt either of these two guys too much. Maybe they just float back into defence and get more intercept marks. So we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. I think the abolition of the sub rule could have an impact on rucks if more teams play two ruckmen. Someone like Sam Draper at Brisbane is potential value, but then you've got Darcy Ford as well. And with the 5 spots on the bench, I think some teams will go down that road of playing two rucks. But when you look at Gawn and you look at Cherry, I'm not sure who their second ruck would even be at either of those clubs. So both those guys we know can ruck solo and put up enormous scores. I'm hoping we can just leave them there and not have to touch the rucks for the whole year. And on the bench, you could go, I'm seeing a few teams with 99k Kalani White there as a ruck forward. But when we've got Liam Reedy coming across from Fremantle to Carlton, pay an extra 20k, you get a guy who might get games. Maybe Carlton play the two rucks with Pitane and Reedy gets a game as well. So he's probably not going to score enough to start him as one of your on-field rucks. I think that would be a huge risk. But on the bench, he might get us, make us a little bit of money, provide some insurance. So I think that's a handy little pick for us there, at least this stage of the preseason. In the forward line, we have a couple of no-brainer picks as well that I think nearly everybody will have. Harry Sheasel is a mid-forward this year. Last year did cause a bit of frustration when Alistair Clarkson moved him forward, played him sort of in a mid-forward role when Supercoaches liked him in defence, but it's paid off this year because he won that DPP status from Champion Data, and now we can all pick him in the forward line. I think there's a very high likelihood he'll be the number one scoring forward at the end of the year, so happy to just lock him away at this stage. Again, North, no early buy or anything like that to worry about. Sam Flanders is the other one there, moved from Gold Coast to St Kilda in the trade period 2 years ago at the Suns. He was a fantastic Supercoach pick, averaged nearly 120, played a lot of halfback that year, sort of playing also swinging through the midfield, and he even played a bit of half forward and scored everywhere. Last year, pushed out of the guts at the Suns. Obviously, you've got Rowell and Anderson just completely dominating there. Tuke Miller and trying to roll some other players through there. With Petrarca arriving there wasn't really room for him, so he's moved to St Kilda. Clearly said he wants to play as an inside mid. So the St Kilda midfielders, the whole St Kilda team will be a really interesting watch given all the changes that they've had there, how they shape up. But I'm pretty sure Flanders will play predominantly midfield, and we know he can score when he does that. And given his price, there's really no risk whatsoever in picking him in the forward line. The next guy, though, is a risk, is a bolter. Someone that we can go ahead and pick in January and see when the countdown clock is ticking to that first lockout, whether I'm brave enough to stick with it in the first game of the year. But again, put the Nuffy hat on for the Tigers. But Sam Lawler, the number one pick from 2024, only played 11 games last year, had a few injury-affected games. I think he only scored 4 points in his last game when he got injured, so that would have dented his average. But I'm not worried too much about that last year. It was all about just the little signs of what he can do, and there was some really special stuff there, especially just his vision in setting up teammates and how important he was, how clean he was in traffic. And I just think, a lot of great attributes there. And seeing my Instagram feed, all the pictures and videos of how he's tracking in preseason just looks absolutely in top shape. They're playing him through the midfield into match simulation, so I think Richmond needs to do that, get some fresh blood through there. They basically had the same midfield setup for quite a long time, and it's time to freshen things up. And Lawler, that's why they got him. So I'm sure he'll mix a bit of time forward as well, but we've seen he can have an impact down there. So he's priced at about 55 at under 300k. I think he can definitely outscore that. It's just a question of by how much and for how long. If we can get 8-10 really good games out of him, make a bunch of cash, amazingly he could if he's a keeper. But I think there's definitely plenty of potential to outscore that price. It's just a matter of, as I say, by how much and who else potentially puts their hand up over the preseason. But love having him there at the moment. Then we go down into sort of the rookie price players, but starting with Mateus Philippou, who's obviously been on St Kilda's list for 2 or 3 years now, has had no luck whatsoever with injury. When he has got a run at it, for brief periods, we've seen what he can do. 2 years ago, he actually was played through the midfield for a stretch at the end of the season and was putting up 80s, 90s, 100s in Supercoach. It was a small sample size, maybe 4 or 5 weeks, but the potential is definitely there. He's a top 10 draft pick. So far, again, as we've said with a few of these guys, looking good in the preseason, and there have been some nice clips of him winning clearances and playing in the guts. So as I said, we'll watch and see how that St Kilda team comes together. But if he's anywhere near that midfield and if he's playing, really no risk picking him at that really bargain starting price. So, fingers crossed Matthias Philippou gets a clear run and is there in round one. And then again, down to the rookies, Todd Marshall is just an interesting one out of Port Adelaide who I had never thought about picking in all the years playing Supercoach in the years he's been around until I heard he's training with the defenders at Port Adelaide, and then he's coming back from injury, so he's very cheap. And it's just, interesting if he's playing half-back and he's getting some kick-ins maybe and taking some intercept marks, he could score okay. So we'll see how he goes in the preseason, but an interesting name there to keep on your radar. Devon Robertson, Supercoaches have been kind of waiting for this for a few years for him to get out of Brisbane just because it's such a stacked team, stacked midfield. He played 4 games last year and he was the sub in every single one, averaged about 15 Supercoach points just because he barely got on the park. So his price is, again, priced like a first-year player. He's actually been in the system for 4 or 5 years but has never really got a clear run. He scores in the VFL. When he has played full games at AFL have always been good. So assume he'll play some decent midfield minutes at West Coast, but we'll keep an eye on that over the pre-season. But I think Devon Robertson could be a great pick for us in Supercoach this year. Now my bench, we'll wait and see on the forward line. I'm curious to see who puts their hand up over the pre-season. Harvey Harrison is one I looked at Collingwood. His rookie price coming back from an ACL. Sid Draper, heaps of potential as a high draft pick at the Crows. Played, I think, 6 or 8 games as the sub last year, so again, extremely cheap. A little bit nervous about him though. The reports are he's still being, in the rehab group at training. They're really holding him back, not taking any risks with him whatsoever. So he's a bit of an iffy one. Tobin Murray at Fremantle is a mature ager out of the VFL. I think he's a bit of a sort of a Sean Manor type who could play early. So keep an eye on him. But yeah, a few question marks in the forward line rookie department. So that's one we'll be hoping to get some good names in the next few weeks, months, a couple of months before round one, that we get some good cheapies putting their hands up down there. And then we come to 31st spot on the list, the flex position, and this is where I've put Adam Treloar, who I think we have to pick if he is there in round one. The scoring potential, we just know how good he is. 2 years ago, he was one of the top midfielders in Supercoach, average 116, played nearly every game. Last year, only played handful of games, a bunch of injuries, which again we know has been an issue for him over his whole career. But he has had, as recently as 2 years ago, he played basically every game. So, it's not out of the question at all that he plays most of the games this year, or at least enough to make a heap of money off that starting price. If he scores like that, he's priced about $300,000 under what he can do. Bulldogs team, again, the midfield, what is Bevo going to do? You've got the Bont in there, you've got Libber in there, you can't really see any of those guys moving out. So is there a spot for Treloar? Do you play maybe a bit off half forward, a bit off a wing? But at that price, in a way, it doesn't really matter. Like, we love him in the guts scoring 120s, but if he's scoring 90s and 100s off a wing or half forward, I think he's capable of doing that wherever he plays. We know he can find the footy, and that is going to make us plenty of money in Supercoach and get us off to a flying start. So that is how my team looks at about 5 p.m. on the 20th of January. As I said, unlimited trades through to round one. No doubt I'll make use of that feature, though. I'll try to stick to my guns, but keep track of all those changes here. The Phantoms team will be online very soon. All the track watch, all the news you need to know, and all our regular podcasts. So catch you back here very soon.